Welcome to another Retirement Readiness Thursday. It's Dre Griggs, founder of Sitting Wisdom, certified financial planner, who loves to talk to you about building multiple streams of income, how to plan for the future, and to protect it. That at the end of the day, if we're able to separate our time from our money, everything becomes a lot less expensive. Because if you measure how much something costs, but how long it takes you to get it, which is what I do think we all subconsciously do. We're like, well, that's $10,000. And in your mind, you're like, that would take me, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, a year, whatever it is to make that money. You're like, that's expensive. But what if money wasn't tied to your time? And I would argue that if money isn't tied to your time, that it doesn't feel as expensive. But that if you were, and so in economics, the way we normally talk about it is if you give people $1 million, that depending on the life that you already have, it dictates how you'll spend the money. That is not true that everyone will spend the money. That there are people who are worth billions of dollars. If you give them $1 million, they already are living every ounce of the life that they've always dreamed of, as least as far as finances go. And so you give them $1 million and it just kind of sits in the bottom of the piggy bank. It doesn't really matter. That if you give it to someone else who's maybe on the earlier end of their journey, where $1 million changes their whole life, like you win the lottery, and they spend all of it. And then there's somewhere in the middle. So there's on one end, there's people who would spend literally none of it, means nothing. And on the other end, you have someone who spends all of it, where it's like, these are my dreams coming true. And then we probably all fit on that spectrum somewhere. When you think about the ability for us to build these multi streams of income, I talk a lot about the tactics and the strategies and the investments and the choosings. But today we're going to focus a little bit more on the mindset that there are so many things that we all want to do, but we don't always end up doing it. And it's like, well, why is that? I know I should invest more. I know I should spend less. I know maybe I should save a little bit more. Well, what is it that is that gap between what I need to do and what I am doing? And that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to talk about that little gap that's in the middle. So that way you're able to free yourself up to where even if you got started, you don't fall off the wagon, that you were able to focus and get committed. And so I think that would be a really good use of our time. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna start by just talking about four biases, and bias is just our beliefs. That's all it really is. There's a way that we perceive things, and because we perceive things in a certain way, it can help us, and sometimes it can hurt us, right? So one of them is loss aversion. Very fancy way of saying that we measure losses greater than we measure gains, and we've tried many different ways to do this to get people to do certain things. So in behavioral economics, it's called like nudging people, and what we're saying is if I put it in a way that makes it more likely for you to do the behavior I want you to do, I think you'll keep doing it just because you don't want to change anything. And a good example of that we've recently done is even as a country is the United States said, hey, we have a retirement problem. That there is 65% of people that are retiring broke, that they have less than $5,000 in their savings account. And the government is like, we do not want Social Security to be your main form of retirement income. And when you looked at the numbers and or looking at the 401ks, and they found that the majority of people weren't investing in the 401k. This was about like 15 years ago. And the government said, well, what can we do from a behavioral standpoint to get people to do what we would like them to do? Right. Like economics is social engineering, right? Like, and it can get kind of crazy, but we can talk about all the different ways that we are manipulated on a regular basis. So the way the study went is they said, well, people just stick with whatever you start them in. So if you start them inside of the 401k, most people won't take the time to opt out of it. That if you start them out of the 401k, most people won't take the time to opt into it. So the government, the United States as a country, changed that little thing to where every time you get a new job, you're automatically enrolled in whatever those retirement plans are. And the number switched. So it went from 80% of people non enrolled to 80% of people stay enrolled. And it was because of the friction that we would say. And so when you're looking at the decisions that we make, the way we measure losses ends up being a lot heavier. That if I gave you $100 and then I said, if you don't run a mile, you have to give me back the $100, it's more likely that you'll do it because you'll measure the loss heavier than if I said, if you run a mile, I'll give you $100. That the loss aversion weighs more. You're like, I'm holding the money. I may have already spent it in my mind. And so I don't want to have to give it back to Dre. That's that feeling that we would describe. And when you're investing, If you are someone who has lost money, there's kind of a couple ways that people will do it. One is you'll just leave. You'll pack up your bag. You'll take your ball and go home. Right? You're like, I'm out of here. On the other end of it, people won't sell bad investments. They're like, oh, it's going to come back. And I'm like, I don't think that's going to come back. And they're like, no, 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 it's going to come back. They're like, I don't want to lose this money. And I'm like, dude, that money's gone. You're going to throw good money after bad. And so that's one of them, that we have this way that we measure loss as greater. And there was another study where they had basically done the same thing, where they had given teachers a bonus. I think it was in Chicago or somewhere. And they had given teachers their bonus in August, but they said that they had to give it back in December if the kids didn't do whatever the scores that they needed. Versus they said, if your kids get these scores, we'll then give you the bonus. I think you and I would all admit we're probably more motivated for a variety of reasons, but we don't want to lose what we already have. That's the way we all feel. We don't want to lose what we already have. And that is not something that is good for investment strategies. We do not want to make decisions based off of, I have my money, like I have my paycheck, and I don't want to invest that with the chance of possibly losing my money in real estate or starting a business or in the stock market. Like I don't want to lose that money. The second one is present bias, and oh my gosh, all we're basically saying is that whatever we see, we're thinking, oh, clearly that's always what happens. That if we see a shark bite, we think everybody's getting bit by sharks. Right? I'm in Florida, so we have beaches and stuff. If you anytime you see something in the present moment, we get kind of tuned towards that, where we start seeing it all the time, and it's almost like a reinforcement. I think probably the worst example of this has to be social media. Oh my gosh, social media is crazy. Where if you click on something, then you'll recognize that immediately they will start showing you that again and again and again, and you'll continually see that same thing. That whatever you clicked on, they'll show you a bunch of that. They see a bunch of ads, that you'll see a bunch of people talking about it, and that becomes your present bias. You're like, this must be happening all the time. You're like, no, it's not happening all the time. You're just seeing, in a world of 8 billion people, that the couple of times that it does happen. As a result, a lot of people, they'll watch CNBC and other news channels, and they'll tell them what to buy or what's going on, and what we like and what we don't, and the people make decisions off of that. And where, again, when you're making investment decisions, I'm big on someone that likes to look at the last 5 years. I think if you look at the last 5 years, you put yourself in a pretty good spot to have enough data to know if this company is profitable, whether they're doing good in their industry. And you can, even now, the last 5 years, you can see how they did during COVID. Now, there's just good information, not looking at something right now. So that would be our AI companies, where every AI company is high. I don't know if NVIDIA is worth all that. I know that it's grown a lot over the past 2 years. I've seen articles where they said that they're kind of getting funny with the numbers on how they're always hitting their marks. I don't know. But what I do know is we have to be able to say, I'm going to look at more than whatever the present moment is, and I'm going to give it an equal weight. So number three we have is mental shortcuts. So when you see me look over, I'm just looking at the list because I do have them. And when we do mental shortcuts, there's a variety of different ways. Like if my wife was here, you would, dude, you already know. I would call it mental math, and it's just the way that we sometimes play around with numbers. That if I have a certain amount of money that I allocate towards something, then it doesn't count. And so for her, she would say that cash doesn't count, right? Like she's like, it's already cash, so it's technically already spent. I don't see it on my bank account, so it doesn't count. So if I spend cash, it doesn't count as me spending money. And I'm even saying it out loud. I'm like, you don't really think that, do you? I'm like, you don't really think that. But we do these mental gymnastics. We do funny ways of trying to count things to talk ourselves into something or out of something. That we like to think that we make logical decisions, but the truth is we have to make emotional decisions, because there's not a lot of ways to tell certain things apart. And when you're talking about behavioral, right, economics and things like that, one of the examples that we'll often use is if you were wearing a tie, that at the end of the day, if all your ties are silk and they all are the same length and they all are pressed and ironed, they look the same, how would you choose which tie to put on? And you might say, well, I'll choose the ones that match my outfit. Okay, cool. There's still 10 of them that match your outfit. So how do you choose the one tie that you're going to wear? And the truth is, you're going to make an emotional decision. You are going to have an image come to your mind of you wearing that tie, and it's going to make you feel good or not good. You're going to be like, oh, that's the tie I want to wear, right? That's my lucky tie. Or that's the tie I want to wear. The last time I wore that was when I got this job, or I went on that date. That we always will think through. And eventually we have to make emotional decisions for some things. Investments is not really like that. Investments, you really should make a logical decision. You should have a scorecard that says, hey, these are the metrics I'm looking at. I'm looking at profitability. I'm looking at the industry that they're in. I'm looking at the amount of debt that they're carrying over, the projection for that industry as a whole, and their position in that. You look at the management team, you look at the revenue, cost, you look at the metrics, and then we'll make those decisions. And we should. We are talking about building multiple streams of income. Because if we make emotional decisions, and then let's say we really like a CEO, and that CEO resigns or retires, well, what's left? Do you still really like the CEO, or the CEO goes and says something crazy? Right? There's a lot of people who used to invest in Tesla because they really liked Elon Musk. And then lately, those people that have liked him don't like him, and those that didn't like him do like him, right? Flip flop. And then people are like, I'm not, like I don't want to be associated with him anymore. And you have to, at some point, you have to say, all right, well, did I make my investment decision solely based on what I thought that person believed? Or did I make my decision based on how I believe that person's going to run the company? Now, you might say that they go together, which is totally an argument that you could make. But we do want to recognize whenever we're doing those mental math, mental gymnastics, as I would say, and then the less technical fourth bias that we'll talk about today, and then we'll go into strategies to help you get over them, is what we would call your comfort zone. And you and I know that the comfort zone is just as it sounds. There are certain things that we've done and we've always done them, and we want to keep doing it that way. And when you're talking about the reason that people, right, if you just think about investing, if you think about your retirement, your multi streams of income, why is it that running out of money is the number one fear that people have? And I would say it's because you have, generally speaking, you have a large bag of money and you're not sure how to turn that into a monthly income stream. That if you knew how much your monthly income was, then you wouldn't have to worry about it because you're like, I'm gonna get paid the rest of my life. That if you got a paycheck once a year, you know that requires planning. And that requires more planning than if you got a check once a month. But that requires more planning than if you got a check once every 2 weeks, which requires more planning than if you got a check every week. And that if I asked you, how would you prefer to receive your paycheck? Most people would say, I would choose weekly, whatever the highest frequency is, because I don't have to figure things out. I don't have to plan. If I make a mistake, I'm going to get a new check next month. But if I have a check once a year and I'm sitting here and I messed up and it's like July and I got to figure out how to make it the rest of the year, we start feeling uncomfortable. Well, multiply that by like 30 years because that's what your retirement is. Your retirement is you literally trying to figure out how to take a certain amount of money and then you're going to be able to spend it. And you're like, I have some years where the market goes up. I have some years where the market goes down. I have some years where the inflation is decent. I have some years where inflation is bad. I have years where I go to the doctor. Sometimes I have years where I go to the doctor all the time. And you're sitting there in your mind, you're like, can I afford this? Can I do this? And we are, we get back in our comfort zone. We're like, dude, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Maybe I just won't spend anything. That way I just at least don't have to think about it. Same way when it comes to investing, where you're like, I don't know. I'll figure that out later, which is code for I'm not coming back. I'm not doing that again. We can see why these biases impact our ability to make good decisions, right? I think we can all recognize that. Now, the reason that this matters for our income streams is because if you have these biases, then you won't finish anything. And you can take it from investments and you can put it with anything that you want to try to do, right? I'm going to run my first marathon on Saturday. And I have been training and I have gotten my time down to from like 17 minutes, which I know you're going to say, Dre, that's not literally possible to jog at that. And I'm telling you, I was jogging and it was killing me. And I got it down to where I'm right under 13 minutes now. I can teeter into 12 and a half minutes and like 12 minutes, 11 seconds. Like I could teeter kind of in there and it hovers around there. I need to be under about 13 and a half to be able to finish the marathon in 6 hours, which is what the time limit is. And so I'm right there. So everything's just got to go well. So keep me in your prayers, of course, for that. But what we're saying is you get excited for something. And then at some point you get nervous because you're like, dude, I get a little overwhelmed thinking about everything that goes into this. And then we're like, I'll figure that out later. We do nothing. Right? We talk ourselves out of things. We get nervous. Or we can say, I'll try something once, right? Like, they talked me into it. I did it. And then, of course, how does it go the first time we do anything? It goes poorly. It goes very poorly. So we do it once. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't go very well. And I'm like, nah, that's not for me. Right. Again, these are all mental gymnastics. That is true that along the way you're investing in the market. I tell people all the time, like there is a chance that we'll lose some money. Most likely we're invested in a way that we won't lose everything. but it's possible that the market goes up and it goes down, and you have to be able to deal with that. Now, we do risk analysis and different things where we're able to really lay it out for you, where you should feel very comfortable about the decisions that we're making and how it works for your retirement. But it doesn't change the fact that people look, they look all the time. And then they'll look and they'll say, "Hey, Dre, I just saw that the interest rates went down." And they'll be like, "What does that mean? Am I in a good spot or bad spot?" Right? Because the market likes that. And when I describe the behavior economics of it, which is if interest rates are low, then people will invest more because my money is cheap. That's basically what it means. Your money is cheap. So if you can give me money at 3% and I'm able to invest that and make 8%, well, I just made 5% profit. So I could pay you back and then I can keep the rest. And I borrow the money to do that. And that's what a lot of businesses do. That's why lower interest rates are good in the market. Now, the reason we don't always have low interest rates, which I do always like to say, because if you didn't know better, you would just think, well, why don't we just keep the interest rates low all the time? Right. And you'll be like, yeah, I know why. Because we just went through COVID. I know exactly what happens. If you print a bunch of money and you have interest rates at zero, and they have the reserve requirement for banks, which I won't go into fractional banking because that's like a nightmare by itself, that you'll end up with hyperinflation, that you will have 40-year high inflation, which is what we did. If there's a lot of money, because think about it this way, some of you bought homes that you paid $100,000 over asking price, or at least you knew people in your neighborhood were selling their homes for $100,000 over asking price because your home value was going up. Well, from a mathematical perspective, what's happening is your real estate agent is like, hey, if you really like this home, we gotta go higher than asking price. And you're like, okay. And they're like, well, if we go 100,000 over, because interest rates are 2.5%, it's probably gonna add $15 a month onto your mortgage. And most people, if you tell them that, they're gonna be like, $15 a month? Like, what are we talking about? Go for it, right? Put the bid in. But then if you raise the interest rates, which is what we had to do, people stop buying the houses. Why? Because now when I told you, hey, we're gonna have to go over asking price, like how much? Like, well, it's gonna be like $150 on your monthly payment. And most people would be like, pause, I don't want $150 more of monthly payment. And right, that's how it works. So it's always a sign when interest rates are going up that you're actually in a very strong economy, so strong that we don't need the low interest rates to artificially inflate economic growth. That when you see, as we just had with the Great Recession, and now you see it happening again, whenever you see interest rates going down, it's actually a sign that we're in a very weak economy and they're worried about us possibly going from a recession to a depression. So we're trying to stimulate economic growth by making money relatively free to get people to come off the fences, sell their houses, make moves, businesses grow, people change jobs, all that stuff. So when you're looking at that, we know that, all right, well, I don't want to overthink, but I want to understand. Right? There's economic seasons, there's four of them, just like the four seasons of regular weather. That there are seasons and there's decisions that make sense in each season. But if we overthink it, then we're going to be analysis paralysis. We're not going to do anything. And for many people, and this is definitely one of mine, so I have a little tinge of perfectionism in me. And because of that, the fear of failing sometimes has me stopping from taking action. Now, the interesting thing is, I will be someone who's okay working in the dark, like quietly by myself, not really saying much. Right? Me talking about the marathon with you guys is definitely me stepping outside just a little bit. But I did want to share that with you. But when I run, the majority of the time, I run at night. Like I run, it's probably like I'll probably leave the house. I'll hang out with the kids. We'll eat dinner. Right? That's why I was a little late today because I was finishing up their dinner. And once I do that, I will then put them to bed, tell them good night, and then I will go and I'll go run. So I'll run like 9 at night to maybe midnight, if depending on how long I'm running, because I'm a slow runner. Right, I'm not fast, right, but I'm a slow runner. And then I'll come home, I'll take my shower, I'll check on them and give them one last kiss, and then I will normally stretch and ice, and then I'll go to sleep. Right, like that's kind of how I like to do things. In the dark, no one can really see me because I feel like I'm embarrassing myself because I've made that perfectionism. The truth is, most people are super supportive and excited because most people are like, "Man, I would like to run," and I'm not running, so they encourage me because they're like, "Look at that man struggling out there. Good for you." I know. Okay, so that's why it ultimately matters. If you allow these biases, they're always going to create inaction because it is always awkward in the beginning. It is true that you won't always win, that you will have losses, that you'll start a business that won't make money. I've started multiple before I landed here, and you will make decisions that you're like, man, oh, I just feel uneasy about. that all of that is true. And if you don't know those feelings are going to happen, I'm telling you right now, they're normal and it's totally okay. You're going to go back. And so we'll end up making these different decisions where it'll be a serial starter where every single time, the way I would describe it is you just build a bunch of bridges, they're halfway there, and then you stop. You immediately like, I'm not worried about that bridge anymore. And so we see that these things do happen. And then you lead into the third one, which just makes the most natural sense. It's like, all right, Dre, everything you're saying is making sense. How do I break? How do I break that chain? How do I change my behavior so that I can start building those multiple streams of income so I don't have to worry about things anymore? And there's a handful of them. So one of them is the 5 minute rule. And all we're saying is that just tell yourself we're gonna do it for 5 minutes. I do that when I don't feel like running. I'm like, we're just gonna run for 5 minutes. And the truth is you're gonna run for a lot longer than 5 minutes. That's we're just telling ourselves it's not that big of a deal. It's just gonna be 5 minutes, it's just gonna be 2 blocks, it's just gonna be $5. Whatever it is, we're just telling ourselves it's not a big deal. You're over here over analyzing, you're trying to figure everything out. There's no doom and gloom. We're just gonna do a very small amount. And that's always a great place to get yourself to take action because then your mind is going to automatically say, all right, then this is not something I have to get right. Right. I told my oldest daughter that she was trying to figure out her major, making all these different decisions. And I was like, the truth is you may change your mind and that's okay. That we shouldn't require 18-year-old Autumn to make decisions that 38-year-old Autumn has to listen to. And then it's like, look, you're just making a decision for the next like 5 years. And if that changes, then it changes. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Like if it doesn't, great. If it does, that's fine. You have lots of 5 year windows and you can kind of work for that. The second one is you have loss framing. And all we're saying is what loss framing is in our mind, we're always thinking about what is the cost of doing something. So if I'm sitting with someone and I'm like, all right, here is the retirement plan. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to invest. These are how we make decisions. That it sometimes is important for me to have them think through what does it cost to not do anything? Because in our mind, we're always comparing best case scenario versus the doom and gloom of this action. And we should sometimes compare the best of best, and we should sometimes compare the worst of worst. And so if we are saying, all right, well, this is what it costs me to take action, well, then what does it cost you to not take action? Right? You're like, oh, because there is a cost to not take action. Like, oh, that makes sense. All right. So if I don't figure out how to build multiple streams of income, then I will always have my income tied to my time, which means earned income, which means it's the least efficient form of income tax. And then some people say, oh, I'll just work till I die. And that's possible, but it may not be what you want to do. Or at least you want to have the option to work not for money, but because you just want to work. I like the idea of thinking of it through that. So that's one that I look at all the time. My kids are annoying me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to calm myself and I just think, and I'm just like, but one day they'll be gone and the house will be quiet and your grass will be tall because they haven't been running on it, playing on it, and you won't be more happy. And when I think through that, I'm like, yeah, that's true. So then I'm like, all right, go ahead and keep playing, right? Go ahead and keep killing my grass. And then when my HOA sends me a letter, I'll just buy some new grass because it resets me. I'm like, yeah, that's worth it. And like that stuff matters to me. It matters. So that's how I try to do that. And then the pre-commitment strategy, I'm definitely someone who likes to write things down because I'm a visual person. So if I have it written down, I know that at some point in time, I'm going to keep looking at that item, that list, and then I'm going to take action off of that. And I also like, and I've seen it, I haven't done it many times, but you'll make a video for yourself where you're just like, hey, whatever mindset you are in that is super motivated, which is probably at the very end of the night, like we're just going to be honest, right? At the end of the night, you're like, oh yeah, tomorrow's going to be a different day. And then when tomorrow the alarm goes off and you're just like, I think I'm going to snooze and we'll just figure it out the day after tomorrow. That we all have done that. That if we have a video from ourselves, telling ourselves how we felt in that first moment, we can sometimes bring ourselves back to that. And in many ways, that's why I'm a goal-based planner. I love goals because when you talk about money, the reason that we go for money is because there's something we want to do with it, whether it's like supporting our family, whether it's fulfilling a dream, whether it's just to keep our lights on and food on the table, that we all have something we want to do with the money. And when we're reminded of that, it helps us to not spend it. And I meet with the people a lot of the time, and they have a lot of money that comes in and they have a lot of money that goes out because they have no future goals to compare it against. So when the money comes in, it's just sitting in the account and they're like, I have nowhere to put it. I have nothing else to do with it. So I'm going to spend it today. And then they'll realize at some point, man, I should have been placing it for retirement. I should have been placing it for those trips and those different things. That's how all of us are. That if there is a goal, then we're able to pull ourselves through it. that there's tons of people who will stop smoking because they were diagnosed with something and they're like, oh snap. And you and I both know, we all know that smoking causes lung cancer or is highly correlated with it. But it's not until it sort of comes hitting us face to face. And then people who have children where it changes them, where they're a jerk without children and they're super responsible with children. And you're like, what changed? And like, well, my kids, I can't be a knucklehead anymore. That goals do help us to measure the costs of these decisions because all economics is at the end of the day is trading your time and your money. That we have scarce resources, which means we have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of money, but we have unlimited desires. And even if you're someone that's the richest person in the world, like Jeff Bezos, he couldn't buy all of Google. Right? He literally can't buy Google. Google's worth more than that. So even someone who has what we feel is an unlimited amount of money, they still have limited resources. They can't just do everything. And so it's important for us, at least what I've seen, I found that when you have goals, it helps you. And so I'm a big fan of writing them down, have like 20 to 30 goals, and then never allowing yourself to go below that. So anytime you accomplish something, you'll add a new one to the list. And then I normally like to set the goals in less than 1 year, 3 to 5, and then 10 plus. And normally the way it works is you are going to align all your goals to help you achieve those big ones along the way. And then let's see here. So if that's making sense for you, right? Hit the like button. Appreciate that. All right. And then I do like to simplify things. I think that we all get overwhelmed pretty quickly when you're like, oh, that's a lot. That's a lot of moving pieces. I don't know what to do. That if we break it down into tiny steps, we feel a lot better. And for me, when I see the numbers is like 65% of self-made millionaires have at least 3 streams of income, I always like to say, let's just start with one. And if you're in real estate, we can start in real estate, and then you have rental income. If you have a business, then we can focus on your business, and then you have your profits in your business, and then we can leverage that whether into like royalties, where you add an income stream in your business, however that looks. And if you're working and you just want to be able to put some money aside for your time, then and you want to be a little bit more passive, then we're normally going to invest in the stock market. And so you have interest income, and that's what you and I pay. We pay interest on our house and our cars. You can give out money and charge interest. So that's an income stream for you, just like it is an income stream for the banks. You also have dividend income, which is actually classified as investment income. And so that's the dividends. And then when you sell assets, it's capital gains. And you're able to, and then you can even have rental if you want to be more passive. You could either have a like landlord run everything, or you can invest in REITs where they run everything, but you're invested in the company. I always tell people just start with one. Like we don't have to overthink this. We don't have to stress about this. Just start with one. But then let's have a realistic understanding and expectation. Let's not fall into the traps that I find a lot of scams. What they do is they promise you everything in a short amount of time with no money, right? Like you give me nothing, I give you everything. And when you think of it, it's like, yeah, come on, right? That economically doesn't make sense. That if I could generate someone $1 million, why would I sell that for $15? Because that's what they're doing. I see the same silly ads too. And I'm like, how is that right? Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just open your own hedge fund? Right? Like if you really could, why would you sell it for $30, $20? Like a crazy number. And they're like promising the whole world. And that's how scams end up working. They feed on the risk aversion that we all have. But the reality is there is risk in all of our decisions, even risk of not investing, where if you don't invest, you're going to have inflationary risk that you have to figure out how to be able to just afford your lifestyle. We just saw that with eggs. Price of eggs went up kind of high, right? I saw something about Valentine's Day where it said my husband went all out for me, and it was like a carton of eggs in a rose, and I was like, "There's no way that there's a carton of eggs in a rose," but they did. I love it. So that definitely made me laugh. Let's see here. All right, retire. Yes, goals help me to retire. Amen, my friend. I 100% agree with that. I think goals help us to know how much time things can take, and it does help us to prioritize our time and our money. That it just really does. I find it to be very beneficial. I'm glad it helped you retire junior. That's the J. I'm a junior too. Yeah, I'm Dre Junior. Okay, so let's talk about the behavior behind the wealthy, and then I'll give you your challenge, and then we'll be good to go. So the interesting thing is, and this was a big mindset shift for me, so hopefully it helps you, is that wealthy people don't actually avoid the fear, they just take action anyways. And I really want to focus on the just take action anyways, because I spent a lot of years, and there are a lot of people who make a lot of money selling this idea that they can change the way we feel. But I listened to a lot of superstar athletes, entrepreneurs, people at the top of their industries, and they talk about how they don't feel like doing what they do most of the time. And that was like a big eye-opening thing for me because I was like, I thought you had to feel like doing it to do it. And I learned that no, you don't actually have to feel like doing it. You just do it because that's the plan and you're going to stick to the plan. And so I was like, Michael Phelps was like, yeah, I swam every day for 365 days in a row. And you know what? I didn't feel like swimming every single day. And I'm like, that's the truth. Like, you're right, that's true. And then you'll listen to like Kobe, and there's videos of him, Michael Jordan, and there's stuff of him, Serena Williams. I listen to her talk about it. Even The Rock, right? Everybody talks about the person who does the thing every day is always going to outperform the person who only does it when they feel like it. Now we don't actually feel like doing it. And I had spent a handful of years trying to figure out what was wrong with me, why I didn't feel like doing it, and how I could get myself to feel like it. And I remember just being like, man, there's something wrong with me. And then I found out that no, I'm just like everyone else. We all don't feel like doing the things that need to be done, but a handful of us do it anyways. So that was a big mindset shift for me. So I stopped trying to figure out how to get myself to feel like doing it, and I just did it. That even if it took me right, there's days where I'm training for the marathon and different things, and it's been a lot of work. And I'll take a picture of it because you'll see it. But my left leg isn't as strong as my right leg because I had ruptured my patella tendon, which is your kneecap, and so I had lost a lot of the muscle that was in my leg, like my quads and my hams and my calves is much smaller. And at some point, I realized because I actually had pulled my Achilles in college playing flag football, and I just never really spent the time to rebuild it. And as a result, I think it was probably why I had the nagging injuries. So it was sort of hard to run. I'm not going to lie. It's like every time I took a step with my left leg, it was like all my energy went and it was gone. Like I didn't have the ability to lift up off of one leg. And I was like, man, that I didn't realize I was subconsciously adjusting even the way I walked to take the weight off of that leg. And so I've been spending a lot of time doing one-legged drills, and it is not fun, right? It's not fun, but it's rewarding. That when I'm done, I feel great. Every single time, I feel great when I'm done. And then my kids, they see me, and it helps motivate them. When I tell them, "You can do this. You got to go for it," they're looking at me and they're like, "Are you going for it, Dad?" And they're like, "Okay, he's going for it, so he knows what he's talking about." And if I'm just sitting around watching football all the time, they're going to be like, that man, that joker has no idea what it looks like to achieve your goals because he's just laying around doing nothing. And so I do recognize that. So in some ways, we have to automate things where we don't want to have to fight ourselves about doing it. And some people will say that they have, and I've seen them where you have certain alarm clocks that roll off of your nightstand and they like roll away from you. And the idea is that you just don't feel like laying down after that. I've seen some where they automate their investments with a certain amount of money that goes from either paycheck or from their checking account, and it goes automatically into their investments. They have the allocations already set up. And then naturally you have your goals. You look at that. I think if you look at your goals every day, I've seen some people go as far as say they write them out. So every day they wake up, they write out their goals. And I think that's more like on the manifesting type of vibe. But I do think it brings awareness just from a behavioral standpoint. It is true that when we're looking for something, we find it. We see it. That we buy a new car, we see that car all the time. That these things are true. That there's so much going on that your mind just kind of blocks it unless it knows it's important to you. That when you're driving, how could you pay attention to all the cars, all the trees, all the birds, all the roads, the rain, everything, your kids talking? How could you pay attention to everything? So your mind just tries to help you to eliminate the things that don't matter. So I think it works that way, even if it's not the as magical as people say. I just think from a regular economic behavioral standpoint, I think it does work. And that we do want to have a certain relationship with money that is very beneficial. That money is not the goal. That money is what we receive for helping others, right? And so in society, we have almost demonized money in a way where I think people almost are self-sabotaging because they're not sure that they should even desire money, that it makes them a bad person. But money can make you comfortable. Money can make you more of who you already are, right? Just like someone that's drinking, they're like, "Oh, I was drunk." I'm like, okay, well, that's just who you are, right? Like at the end of the day, everybody who gets drunk doesn't hit somebody, so that's you. And so when you're looking at And when you're looking at money, you really do have to change your relationship with it. That a bodybuilder's relationship with food is different than someone who emotionally eats, right? Like it's just true. Bodybuilders just get the protein and then that's it. And then if someone that emotionally eats is like stressing or crying and then they're eating to feel better. Different relationship and they get a different result. I think you and I agree. So when you're talking about your relationship with money, what is the purpose of money for you, right? So for me, for the most part, money is a tool. So I like to invest money because I like the idea of having my time separated from my money. That's why I do retirement planning. I like the idea of my children not having to be have to compromise their goals or their integrity for money. That I would like them to have the option of doing something that helps them achieve their goals where they don't have to sacrifice themselves. That one of my daughters is like, man, I really love to be in Broadway, but man, that's like so expensive to live in New York and it'd be really hard and things like that. Like I would like to be able to say, well, if you're willing to put in the work, then go for it. Like I would like to be able to do that. And so for me, that's a lot of ways what money is. That's why a lot of the work that ultimately that we all should be doing is the goal-based ideas. That what is it that I want to do with it? If you want to protect your spouse or you want to leave a legacy, you want to donate to your church or your mosque or your synagogue, that whatever it is that is your identity, that we need to see money as a tool to achieve that. That the money isn't a bad thing. That money is someone trading a relationship, right? It's a medium of exchange, and we're trading them something that's more valuable than the money. Now, I have toilet paper in my house, and I'm not mad at the people who make toilet paper. I'm actually very thankful and happy for that. I have gas in my car. I'm not mad about that. I like my car turning on. That there are things that we make trades, and that money in that trade was very beneficial for us. They solved a problem for us. And so you should think of yourself that way. You are solving problems. If you have an apartment complex and you're giving people a roof to put over their head, of course they want to pay you rent. That if you have a business idea and you are literally solving a problem for them, right, something as simple as helping kids. I got so many ads when my oldest daughter was going to go to college. We're like, oh, we'll help them get a great score on the SAT. That's very beneficial. Like, hey, do you want this? Do you want this study material? And they're like, yes, I want this. Now, when I got my certified financial planner, I passed that exam and I did my Series 65 exam to open the RIA. All these things I bought study materials, and I was very thankful to do that. The trading in that relationship is totally worth it. And if you are solving a problem for someone, why wouldn't they want to thank you for that by paying you? And so you have to change that relationship with money. You have to have one where you see it as a reward for you helping someone solve their problem. Not that you're greedy, not that you're a bad person, not that it's wrong, not that it's a sin, but that I am helping someone who is better off for having met me than they were otherwise. All right. And so I do like to think of it that way. And so then we'll close out with your weekly challenge. Okay. So all we're going to do is pick one behavior that you feel is holding you back. Just one behavior that's holding you back. Is it analysis paralysis? Is it the fear of loss? What is one behavior that is holding you back? That every time you're about to do something that you know you need to do, and then right before you take that step, you feel a little uncomfortable. What is that one thing? And then what you're going to do is you're going to put your 5 minute action plan together. And so if you, for example, you're like, Dre told me to start investing, I'm uncomfortable. Just a quick $20. Put it in your investment account. That's fine. That is not going to kill anybody, and it's okay, and you're going to feel better. You're like, oh wow, I feel really good about that. And that if perfectionism and the just that like being embarrassed, right? We talk about that, right? Public speaking is a super big fear for people. That if you have perfectionism, that fear of being embarrassed in public, then just put something out there. Just anything out there. And yes, there are jerks. I agree. There's like 10 of them. It's the same 10. They just keep showing up, but there's like 10 of them. But that's okay because it just shows something about them more than it shows about you. And I found that in most of my interactions, when people say things, 99% of the time, it's a reflection of them and their beliefs. It's not a reflection of me and my beliefs. That they don't know. They have no idea what I was thinking. All they can do is share with me what they were thinking. And so I found that helps me. And so if you are now, if you're like, hey, I'm really not sure genuinely about my first step, then I'm like, all right, that's fine. Then we should go to the library, let's get a book, buy a course, whatever. We got to take action. So we want to train ourselves that feeling of uncertainty, that feeling of anxiety, that feeling of apprehension is not a sign to stop. That is a sign to go. that this is the feeling of the first step of my journey. And you train yourself to do that. Like, no, this is the feeling of excitement. This is the feeling that I am doing something. I'm stretching out my comfort zone, that I am changing myself, that who I am today is not going to get me to where I want to be tomorrow. And you have to train yourself that this is not a sign to stop. This is not pain. This is not discomfort. That this is the sign that it's time to go. And then you go. And so you don't need massive action. You just need to agree to do just a little bit each day. Consistency will build up. And that the numbers pan that out. That someone who is consistently investing over a period of time is going to outperform someone who invested once and left it alone. And then you'll be able to go for there with that. Now I do have it's actually a really cool retirement income quiz. If you go to obsidianwisdom.com/income quiz, it is a free quiz that you can take, and I will show it to you real quick so that way you can take it if you like. And then if you don't like, you don't have to worry about it. But if you do like it, you can take it. And then if you have any other questions for me, of course, I will answer them for you. But outside of that, then I hope you all just have a great rest of your day. All right. So it should pop up there in a second. I move myself to the side so at least you can still see me because I don't see it on the screen yet. Come on, dude. You already know. It's just how the computer would like to be, right? It doesn't want to show it, and it's such a great screen that it's getting to me. All right, hey, I got it. See, I was able to figure it out. Thank you for not giving up on me. So, right, so it's a free quiz. It's going to give you a score right after you're done. It's like 17 questions. Literally takes like 2 minutes, and you'll be able to go through that and get them, and you'll have a strong idea of your next step. And from there, I do hope that if you have any questions, reach out to me. As always, I'm Dre Griggs, founder of Obsidian Wisdom, where we help you to worry less and more wisdom. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy life.